I'm joined now by the Super Bowl 34 champion head coach with the St. Louis Rams, who was also named AP NFL Coach of the Year in 1999 and won the Rose Bowl in 1975 as the head coach at UCLA. He is a member of the Philadelphia Eagles Hall of Fame, St. Louis Football Ring of Fame, and was elected into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2022. From high school to the pros, he has done it all. On behalf of myself and Brandeis University, Coach Dick Vermeil, thank you for joining the program today.
Hey, my pleasure.
Most of our listeners have not had many opportunities to hear about junior college athletics. Can you provide insight into your experiences at the College of San Mateo and Napa Junior College in 1963 and 1964?
Well, they were very important to me. And, California has a huge junior college or community college program. They're all over the state, different than most states within the United States. But it's great for me. I grew up in a little small town, 1,800 people, 130 kids in the high school, 29 kids in my graduating class. And I really had no aspirations of going to college. I was going to stay home and work in my dad's garage. He was going to build a new garage called Vermeil and Sons. Okay, that was okay with me. And then a high school football coach told me he thought I could play college football if I wanted to, and that stimulated me. So I changed my views and I changed my goals, and I said, "All right, I'm going to go to junior college, catch up academically, then go somewhere and try to play and become a high school football coach." So, and that's turned my whole life around.
And how do you think your coaching approaches changed between junior and Division One college football?
Well, that time when I was in junior college coach, I'm talking about a long time ago. All coaching has changed today. It's so much more sophisticated today. There's the more volume in what you do with the ball, more volume in your defensive schemes, and just it's a more sophisticated game. In the old days, you had a limited number of plays, and you spent a lot more time on fundamentals and these kinds of things rather than the just because when I went back in, even after being in pro ball and going into broadcasting for 14 years and coming back, I recognize the number one thing. The volume of what everybody is doing is so much greater than when I left. And the same as in junior college. Junior college is an advanced high school program. Okay. And you have better athletes, so you do a little more with them. You try a little more difficult things to do, both fundamentally and scheme wise. But overall, teaching is teaching, coaching is coaching. And I've never really change my philosophy of coaching, regardless of what level. You've got to be yourself. You've got to gradually find out what you really believe in, and it takes time to do that. You don't develop a philosophy in 3 or 4 years in high school coaching, and 2 years in junior college coaching, and then Division One, and you gradually build an approach and a philosophy because you learn what works for you. You learn from others that you work with. I had great exposure to a lot of great coaches, including the Bill Walshes and the Chuck Knoxes and the Tommy Prothros, the John Ralstons, Jim Moores, and these kind of people. So you learn a lot from them. And that positively influences how you keep improving your thoughts and philosophy of coaching and teaching and what you do with the ball. So, but anyway, it was not like working. It was not like working.
When you talk about coaching, do you think, and are you a fan, because considering that you worked in broadcasting and you were exposed to the technology that we see there in the metric statistics, if you were to coach today, are you a fan of all the metrics and all the numbers games, or is it more so I see and I'm hearing certain things and I'm going to trust that?
Good question. Well, I've always been a fan of the numbers. I
Yeah.
was always inquisitive. I hear people say, this and this and this, and I'd say, I'm not sure that's true. So I would do my own independent studies. And then I got involved through George Allen with a guy that was an advanced mathematician. And he started analyzing football games actually before the computer. And then he later turned it all into the computer. And I was involved with that in that he was a mathematician, but not a football guy. So George Allen would have me as well. The next head NFL coach I worked with, Prothro and Chuck Knox, would have me communicate with this genius, really mathematician, and have him tell him what we want him to find out. What we want him to analyze. And I think today, again, it's so much more sophisticated. The computers help it. Now everyone has an analytical department. I say all that is good as long as you allow instant human judgment to be included within the decisions. For example, today, people going on fourth downs. Well, it's successful. What you don't know is fourth down a higher risk this week than it was last week. Maybe these people have an outstanding big fourth down defensive team, and maybe the odds of being successful on fourth down against this team isn't as good as it was last week. Maybe the guy that was very successful for you on fourth down as an offensive player is injured, can't play this week. So you have to include human judgment and evaluation as you go through that. Plus, even this year, I didn't hear of one analytic genius being fired. Coaches got fired, but the analytic guys don't get fired.
I want to switch over to television and broadcasting. Between 1983 and 1996, after your time in Philadelphia and before coaching in St. Louis, you took an extended hiatus and you served as a television broadcaster with CBS and ABC. How was that transition from the sideline to the booth?
It was fun for me. It kept me close to the game. And in those days, when I left coaching in 82, they weren't paying coaches like they did later with me and what they do today. I doubled my salary by leaving the Eagles at $75,000 a year and making $150,000 a year with broadcasting, and only worked 16 weekends. So, that was easy to handle. But overall, it kept me close to the games. Plus, it gave me an evaluation platform. Every place I went, I was watching coaches coach, schemes being executed on the practice field and then the game films. And also I'd sit in the meetings with the Don Shula's of the world and the Bud Grants and the Bill Parcells, the great coaches, and on into college, the Tom Coughlin's and Bill Snyder's and these great coaches. And I pick up little things. I'd say, that's a lot better than the way I was doing it. Or I don't like what they're doing as much as the way I was doing it. But overall, over the 14 years of doing it, I think I really had a much deeper perspective of the game overall wise. Yeah.
And I can imagine you also developed a better understanding of now when the media is trying to extract questions from
Oh, no
coaches and how
question.
you were
Yeah.
able to communicate.
Yeah. I never really got involved media wise. John Wooden told me when I was the head coach at UCLA, he said, Coach, as a head football coach or a head basketball coach in these big jobs, you should not read the sports page when you're coaching, and you should not listen to radio talk shows. And his analogy was, and I can remember it like it was yesterday, he said, if everything they say about you probably isn't all true, if they're saying it's good, it's probably not all true. And if everything they're saying about you that is bad, it's probably all not true. So why do you need the distraction? You don't need it. And it can bother your focus if a certain personality type. And he said, just stay away from it. To this day, I've coached and lived with that concept. I haven't read an article about my Hall of Fame induction. Okay. I just have, I got in the habit of staying away. Therefore, it balances your ego, I think, and keeps things in proper perspective.
We see that tremendously now with athletes as well in social media
Oh,
and come playoff
yeah.
time.
Yeah.
I was evaluating, your tenure and your different coaching, stops along both in college and also at the professional level. And I recognize, you've been fortunate to work with quarterbacks Ron Jaworski, Trent Green, Kurt Warner, non-quarterbacks, whether it's Tony Gonzalez, Herm Edwards, Marshall Faulk. All six of these men have gone on to have successful careers in television. Why and how do you think their time in the NFL transferred to developing a comfort in front of the camera?
Well, first off, intelligence, and personality, poise, and appropriate ego, and they were natural communicators. It wasn't a project or a difficult for them to communicate with teammates and coaches and people in general, and they have enough confidence when they go learn to be a broadcaster. It takes some time. It takes a while. It took me a long time to feel comfortable on camera. Really did. Because anyway, I think those guys had the innate abilities in them. They just weren't exposed to that environment, and they jumped right in to do it. John Madden's maybe the finest example ever. If you knew John, I knew John long before he ever became a broadcaster. Okay, we're both coaching at junior colleges, young kids, and he wasn't at all the personality that he ended up being on television. But he started great gaining confidence in his ability to express himself and explain things in detail to an audience in split-second timing, and became the best ever at it. And there are some guys that just can't do that. There are some guys where broadcasting, they just can't do it. It took me, though, I'm repeating myself, took me a long time to feel comfortable. It really did.
Yeah, I mean, the perfect example that I think of right now is Drew Brees, where he was in and out in a year at NBC Sports. And then you see Jason Garrett, he's getting a couple more years. Tony Dungy has done a phenomenal job. Who would have thought that Tony Romo would have been the best fanatic and psychic to ever go on TV and predict plays?
Yeah. Well, I think Drew Brees would have been as good as he wanted to be, but that was not the life he chose. He didn't want to be gone every weekend again, just like he was in football season. You might as well be practicing football all week long if you're not home. They leave on Thursday, come home on Sunday night or Monday morning, and you're raising a family. And it's like he was and his. It's not a lot of fun to go away 18, 20 weekends, And I think that was more. It was not a fact that he couldn't do it. Yeah, Drew Brees could do whatever he wanted to do. Tony Romo was a great example of, he was a spontaneous personality anyway. And now he's getting a lot of criticism because it's hard to maintain a great edge that you created quickly. Now everyone expects you to be the great predictor of the next play and all that. All of a sudden, it doesn't happen anymore. You hit it ahead right on the nail here initially, and all of a sudden now, I mean, he received a lot of criticism this year. I really enjoy him. I enjoy him a lot. Like I do other guys. I'm not very critical of announcers. The most critical thing I say of announcers, they talk about breakdowns in scheme, but very seldom they ever talk about the breakdown in the fundamentals. The play call was great. The play was great. The fundamentally it broke down. These kinds of things an old coach looks at.
Since coaching, and we're going to talk about this, since coaching the Philadelphia Eagles from 1976 until 1982, and the Los Angeles Rams from 1971 until 1973, I have to think you've interacted in some way, shape, or form with coaches Sirianni and McVay. Am I correct? In some
Coach Sue,
Sirianni and McVay?
No, I
You
did not
haven't.
know. I knew Sean McVay's grandfather, okay, but I
But
never interacted with him.
but since then, since obviously leaving
Yeah,
and in
a
the last
little,
few
yeah.
years.
Yes,
Well,
with Sean McVay and a little bit with Nick. I live in the Philadelphia area, and I go to one practice a year, and I'm on a radio show every Friday morning for 15 minutes and that. But I always remain very positive about what any coaches do. I never criticize a coach because I've been there, done it, and I've made more mistakes than they have. And, hey, no one did any better job than Nick did this year. Sean McVay last year. If anything, and I've said this to most young coaches, when you are real successful too soon, sometimes that's a tough thing to maintain. I look at Sean McVay this year. Expectations, they won it last year, go win it again. No, they didn't have to struggle all year. And that can really wipe you out as a coach.
it's not so much about necessarily the criticisms, actually, but more of the praise. And you think of a Mike McDaniel or a Kevin O'Connell in Miami and in Minnesota. And in a league where seemingly younger coaches have achieved success, obviously you have exceptions with Belichick, Andy Reid, Mike Tomlin. What does this say about the league where there's younger coaches emerging?
Well, the league has allowed that to happen because now coaching staffs have over 20 people on it. When I came to the Eagles with 10 assistant coaches, I had 3 more assistant coaches on my staff than anybody else in the league. Okay. I had 10 on my staff at UCLA and I wanted 10 there. I ended up with 11. So on these staffs now, they have all these interns and assistants to the assistants, and they're all getting trained. So a lot of kids are far more ready to at least know a detailed scheme. Whether they can end up coaching it, handling the leadership responsibilities, the discipline, the organization, the decision making, is left to be seen. But we've had some young people do a very good job. But the reason they're young today is there's just so many of them on coaching staffs under good leadership. How many times have you seen a young assistant hired off a losing team? Okay, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. They always want the scheme that's won. Where owners make a mistake is they really don't know what kind of a contribution that young kid made to the winning on the team that they're hiring him from, and that can be a disaster.
Wanted to briefly touch upon business. How do you think the explosion of the league's salary cap has affected player, owner, general manager, coach camaraderie? And can you provide some insight into your experiences with negotiating, with determining a player's worth and communicating that with the coach, general manager, and keeping the owner in contact and communication so they have an understanding of how much they're paying somebody?
Well, that's a huge question. I mean, you could write a book on those topics. The salary cap, I was coaching when they started the salary cap. And I can remember the owner of the Eagles is saying, no way, I'll sell my football team before I allow the players to get a percentage of what this team produces.
And he ended up selling the team.
Yeah, well, he had to. But anyway, and he was a great owner and a good guy. But that was just the philosophy of everybody. But I like it. I really enjoy seeing the players make good money. The exorbitant money, like 30% of the whole salary cap for one guy, I have a hard time swallowing that, regardless of how valuable, because we all know that is a distraction from the rest of the team. And so you've got a guy playing for 30 million a year, and you got a guy playing for 1 million a year, and then you call it a team. It's harder. So you have more variables. When I went back into coaching, the salary cap was getting bigger. I think it was around 60 million at the time. Now it's 224 million, 0.8. Okay. And percentage goes, and they divide it up and all that. I stayed out of the salary cap because I wanted to be a football coach. I didn't want to be a mathematician. I'm not an accountant, and I'm not a lawyer, but I wanted people with responsibilities to define to me what we have. And then I would say, can we spend it on this guy, and this guy? And and then they'd go get the job done. And I stayed out of most contract negotiations. Young at Philadelphia, I was a little more involved because I was also, in a way, my own football general manager. As I was at the St. Louis Rams, I had the power, not control, but I had decision-making responsibilities. And so I was a little more in tune with it, but I was less X's and O's because I'd been out of it for 14 years. So I couldn't be what I was. I couldn't be my own quarterback coach, my own offensive coordinator, call my own plays because I've been away from it 14 years. But what I did was spread my experience over leadership, organization, coaching staff evaluation, player evaluations, draft, building the organization and pulling them all together for one purpose. And I spent a lot more time doing that coming back in 97 than I ever did in Philadelphia. I was running a football team then.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of reactions to that. I think of, Lamar Jackson, who's asking for an exorbitant amount of money, Deshaun Watson, who did get an exorbitant amount of money. And you have players like Tom Brady before he goes to Tampa Bay, who is saying, no, don't give all the money to me, give it to another player. And then speaking of Tom Brady in New England, I think of Bill Belichick, who also serves as the general manager in New England and has also held different positions alongside being the head coach, whether it's calling the offensive plays, but not necessarily being the offensive coordinator. And so a lot of different things that are happening within, say, the last 20 years.
Well, again, I'm all for players making more money and coaches making more money and owners making more money. But when it gets into exorbitant salaries and that, I say, how much money do you need? How much money do you need to say I'm doing it to secure my family? My God, I made $75,000 a year coaching the Eagles. Okay. I made $32,000 coaching UCLA a year. And we beat Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. I was going to get a raise of $2,500. So, but how much money do you need to be as good as you have the ability to be? More often than not, the money doesn't motivate you to get any better. It gets you a little wealthier and solves a lot of problems for you. But in terms of expressing, well, geez, I have to, respect my family and secure my family at 30 million a year, you just secure a lot of people. So again, having coached for a long time, starting in the league in 1969, I can see what many years in the league does to a player who's now 70 years old, 72 years old, 76 years old, and that's why I'm all for making all the money they can make, because there are a lot of repercussions to the game. And
We saw that this
they're
season.
better at protecting them today than they've ever been. And I'm all for that. I'm all for that. And I'm all for them making as much money. But I'd like to see the money divided a little more over more guys than way too much in one guy. But that's the way it's going. Yeah.
Well, staying in the realm of business, but switching from the player to the city, can you provide, I guess, some opinions and insight and your reaction to when, you Rams go from Los Angeles to St. Louis, and then when they went recently from St. Louis back to Los Angeles, and if you liked the decision, if you didn't like the decision, or if, frankly, you didn't have a reaction because you're just a coach.
Well, no, I was, you get emotionally involved with your city that you're in. I was disappointed for St. Louis, but I understood what Stan Kroenke had to do. He tripled the value of the team by moving to Los Angeles. Okay. And I don't know any business in our capitalistic world that wouldn't move their General Motors, Toyota, everything to an area where they would, double or triple the value of their company. That's just the nature of our world. And so I don't say it's wrong. I think it's disappointing, especially if
Okay.
I've been to St. Louis a number of times, and I stay at the Four Seasons right across from the stadium there. It's you could shoot a rifle down the street there half the time. There's nobody around,
Okay.
and that's disappointing because when I was there, that whole area was bubbling. There are restaurants that are no longer open down around the stadium, and that were open and successful when I was there. So that's disappointing. So I understand, and I don't evaluate or try to have all the answers. I don't criticize those that move because I think it's a business. Yeah, it's a business. Yeah.
Well, this week, obviously, it's not quite yet free agency or the NFL draft, but it is the NFL scouting combine. It's being held in Indianapolis, where more than 300 of the top prospects will be put through on-field drills, medical tests, etc. What value does the combine serve that professional days at universities or visits to clubs may not?
Well, I just think it's another added positive to the overall evaluation process. Said at the combine, though, you get to see all the best at the same time. For example, let's just take a linebacker drill, and you're sitting in the stands. You can watch all the linebackers with your own eyes at the same time go through the exact same drill, and you can't do that on film. I mean, you can watch one game here, then get another tape, and watch a game there, but all at the same time. I think that's a big advantage. The medical side of it is very big. The interview thing is very good. No, there are no negatives, I think, to the combine, other than some kids get left out that ought to be there. There are always kids that don't come to the combine that end up playing and playing well. You know, the great example of a 7th round pick this year with quarterbacks a team on into the Super Bowl. There's always those guys. But I think the combine, you've got to be careful of overestimating what you see in that combine and overpowering it, the use of it over what you've accumulated over this guy's whole career. And I think I've seen mistakes made there. Yeah.
Do you have any memorable visits with a particular player from the combine?
No, I don't remember any one guy. I really don't. I know that when you tie the combine in with the Senior Bowl, see, that's really two. You see the best all together in the practice field for a few days, then see the game, the best against the best. And then you go to the combine and you see those same guys now in the drill situations and the medical situations and the mental situations. It just adds to the overall evaluation process. And that doesn't mean you still can't make a mistake. Many times, guys in those situations that haven't been evaluated as a great high pick coming into the Senior Bowl, the performance in the Senior Bowl raises the evaluation grade. The performance then added at the combine raises that grade. What you've got to be careful of is why the motivation difference. All of a sudden, a guy's got a chance. Where was he the last 3 years? He didn't perform at this level for the last 3 years. So you've got to make sure you put your information into a collective grade, and not everybody has made a mistake going all of a sudden 4.38. Geez. Hey, the best receiver in football this year ran a 4.62. Okay.
Well, given the New England, Boston, Brandeis, Patriots rooting interest, there's no way that I can ask this without or let you leave without asking this. But any memorable interactions with Coach Belichick?
Yeah. A little, not a lot. I've coached against him a lot. I remember when he was a young assistant at the Giants, and I was head coach of the Eagles. I knew his dad in broadcasting. I did a number of Naval Academy games, and I got to know his dad through broadcasting. There's nobody that's ever done it as well as Bill Belichick has done. His style is a little bit unique because it fits him. His overall approach to salary cap and spending the money and the money he puts in this person and by position and that. Nobody has done it better. Nobody. And I would say he's the number one coach of all time.
Well, talking about play calls, even from our television screens today, we're able to hear quarterback play calls. Can you share how plays in general are created and the process specifically behind the names that are assigned to them, how that works out?
Well, first, it all starts in training camp in the offseason with the design of a scheme. You have an offensive package, a defensive package, a special team package. And within that training camp and OTAs and mini camps, and that you teach your scheme. And each year you add to it. That's why Andy Reid is so unbelievable offense. You imagine all the years he's been coaching, and he really coaches the offense. I've heard people say, well, the coordinator does this and this guy and this. Andy Reid is deeply involved in everything that's done in that offense. And you take all those years of experience, he's added to what he likes. He's eliminated what he doesn't like. And you can't surprise him, okay, with all that wisdom and all that experience. But no, I don't know if I lost my point here or not. I would just say the schemes today are it's so easy to learn from somebody else from week to week. We used to practice at the Eagles and not get our practice film until 10 o'clock that night. And we're playing it. Let's say we're playing the Chicago Bears next Sunday. They may not get their game films to us until Tuesday. Now you have them when you get on the airplane or you drive home. You've got it on your computers. You get all that. So the collective information is instantaneous.
What about the play calling and like deciding what a play is going to be named? Does
That's
that
all
come
done in your
later?
staff meetings. That's all done in your staff meetings. And you have everyone has a play sheet, okay, and it's all in categories. And I even had first things first category. The first time this happens, what are you going to do? So you didn't have to think about it. Game day, it's already there, and it's reorganized each week. And then as you get to play calling, all right, now here you are, and you've got in this category 3rd and 8. You have 6 different things maybe you would do in 3rd and 8, maybe only 4. Yeah, maybe a 3rd and 15. How many times have you seen Andy Reid convert a 3rd and 15? These kind of things. It's all categorized. Now, if you've got a group of 4 or 5 plays for each category, excuse me, which one you call is dependent on your judgment at that time. But it's a little easier than you think. It's all your scheme. You take out of your scheme, you utilize it in your game plan, then you categorize it. This is the first time, the first, second time, what are you going to run on 1st and 10 coming out? Boom, it's in this category. And then you pick in between plays of that category, which one you want to use. They just don't pull them out of the hat. And there's so much information on those sheets today. It is amazing. And in the old days, Vince Lombardi, they'd brag about it. They only had 5 or 6 running plays, maybe 10 pass plays, or something like that. But you kept working on improving the fundamentals and improving on why the play broke down last week. So many times plays are criticized for being bad calls during a game and during a broadcast. They weren't bad calls. The fundamentals within that play broke down. The offensive left tackle didn't pass that properly. He didn't step properly with his feet. He didn't get his hands placed properly. Or they didn't come off in the combination block at good angles so they could pick off the linebacker. That's why the play broke down. It was a bad call. All these things are involved. But, people put too much emphasis on in evaluating programs as to who's going to call the plays. Yeah, really, Bill Belichick doesn't call the plays, right? Okay. And Bill Walsh did. Bill just liked it, I did it. at high school, junior college, UCLA, and the Rams, the Eagles, rather. I didn't in the St. Louis Rams because I'd been out 14 years. And, if I missed any one thing, I miss being that deeply involved in the X's and O's, because sometimes you almost feel like you're left out. That doesn't mean as a head coach during the week in preparation, you didn't go to the board and put these few suggestions onto your coordinator. I'd like to insert this and this and this because this is what they're doing here. And because not everybody sees the same thing when they evaluate a play on film. Ted Marshall-Broda was one of the best ever at looking at opponents' films. And that day it was films, and finding the little weaknesses and the nuances that would give you an edge if you did this. And that carries over. And when you get in a total leadership position, sometimes you can miss that.
Well, talking about X's and O's, talking about the involvement, you're coming to us right now from Florida, but I know that you're a California man at heart. In 1999, Vermeil Wines opened. What lessons are you able to apply from the gridiron to this business?
You surround yourself with good people. Okay. I'm not a winemaker, but I knew who the best were, and I recruited the best. And I was fortunate to be born and raised there. And I was making wine with friends as a hobby, not a business. Even when I was coaching the Chiefs. Okay. And we make 150 years of Vermeil wine, 150 cases each season and year. And that was it. I didn't have any money involved. The winemaker that made it sold it at his Cabernet. When I got out, I had some friends that wanted to get involved in the Napa Valley. Well, I had all the connections. I had the little winery, and I was born and raised in the vineyard. And my great-grandfather used to own part of it. So I knew everything. And then we took my process, my friendships, and put it together in a business. Now we make about 2,000 cases a year. We have a little over 500 club members in the club of various levels. We have a tasting room in Napa on 1018 First Street. And it's a good one. We've been very busy the last 3 weekends. It's been down. When we started the Napa 1018 First Street tasting room, there was like 8 tasting rooms in the whole street of Napa there. Now there's 56 of them. So the competition is great. But the number one reason we have a great credibility name in the wine world now is our winemakers. Thomas Brown is our Bill Belichick. No one's any better than he is. He developed the wine of the year in Wine Spectator this year for Schrader, the wine of the year. I bet he has 15 or 20 100 rated wines that he developed. 100 rated, perfect wines. Okay. Now, I don't think I can taste the difference between a 100 rated and a 95 rated or a 91 rated, but there are people that can. But everything's getting more expensive in the wine world. Geez, it's amazing. Where you go to the grocery store, it's expensive, but it's really exaggerating now in the wine world. But it keeps me active in my home valley. It keeps me connected with the people I grew up with. And I like having something to do. I spent some time this morning on Vermeil wine clubs. And I have spent some time with people who are going to go to their great country club and put on a Vermeil wine dinner. That's how we build our business. Yeah.
Okay. Well, before we let you go here, whether it's in free agency or the draft, do you have a bold prediction for the Eagles, Rams, or Chiefs in the next few weeks and months?
Well, I think the Eagles and Rams, I'll put it this way. I think the Chiefs are always going to be great. Whether they're going to go after the Super Bowl, you got Mahomes, you got the coach. And they've got the personnel department. And Andy is the best right now. And so really have no weaknesses. Now you're going to lose some free agents. You're going to sign some free agents. The Eagles, they got the young quarterback. They got a young coach that did a great job. He just lost his offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. And that'll hurt. Maybe it'll help. Sometimes you get a guy in there that new ideas, new thoughts, new processes that add to it. I think the Rams are going to have a little harder time because they gave up a lot to win it all a year ago. And their quarterback is older. They lost their old left tackle last year, just of age. And, it's hard to replace those guys when you don't have first, second round picks. So that's a little tougher on them. But, Sean McVay is a fine football coach. And the trouble is, everybody steals coaches from him now. He spends as much time in the offseason replacing coaches and teaching them his schemes as he does preparing for the season. It's tough. But I'm very optimistic, especially in regard to the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. I think Jalen Hurts is going to be amongst the best, and he's unique in that he does some things other great quarterbacks don't do, and it makes it tough on the defenses when you only see him once or twice a season.
Okay. We'll see what happens. Coach Vermeil, thank you for taking the time to join the program today and providing a rare perspective.
All righty. Yeah. Nice to be with you. Thank you. Good luck with what you're doing.